Good morning, good morning, good morning for your Wednesday morning. This is episode number 18 of Coffee with Campus Consultancy, and today we're joined by the wonderful Tim.
Hi, everyone.
Hey guys, let's get into it. How you doing this morning, Tim?
I'm going really well, thanks, Josh. How are you?
Very, very well. Super pleased that you're with us today. And if you're listening in and tuning in this morning, thank you for coming. If you are with us, let us know. Today we're going to be talking about making early stage career decisions, right from when you're thinking about that at university all the way through to looking at graduate jobs. What happens if you get one, you don't get one? How do you manage those changes and decisions? And we're joined by the amazing Timothy Friel. We used to work together, so it's very nice to catch up. So if you have any questions about that, pop it in the comments below. And of course, if you're popping in the comments below, let us know you're a tea drinker, a coffee drinker. We've got some amazing Kua Coffee, our impact partners, to give away this week. So as always, drop in, say hello, and we'd love to hear from you. So to kick us off, Tim, my friend, tell me a little bit. You said you had an interesting story. Now, I know you're not a coffee drinker from all our many coffee chats over the years, but you said you've got something interesting in the mug or in the bottle, should I say, this morning?
I do. So I'm not a coffee drinker. When I have coffee, I start to shake, even if it's like half strength. I've actually got what's called a Voos. Essentially, it's a cheap version of Barocca.
Okay.
Now, I've been having one every morning for about 5 or 6 years now, where possible. And the reason for this is during uni, I ended up addicted to Red Bull or Mother or V or whatever I could get my hands on. So I was starting the day with each one of those. And it was just such a bad thing for my health. I was like, look, I want to convert to something that gives me vitamins, which it does, but also adds some good flavor to the morning. So every morning I have one of these. Try and drink it between 8 and 10. And that way I'm, not thinking about coffee or energy drinks or anything till at least lunch.
I love it. I love it. I know the idea. There's a cheap version of not Mother, but what's it called? Rockstar. I think it's a pretty dodgy brand. And that was like one of my first ever brand ambassador roles at university. And I got in with Rockstar, and they gave me all this like Rockstar stuff. I literally couldn't give the stuff away quick enough. Like I couldn't give it away. People didn't want it. Like I was trying to give it away. Yeah, they were like, "Do you have any Red Bull?" I'm like, "I don't have any Red Bull, but I've got this 0 calorie, whatever it was, Rockstar stuff." Anyway,
so the Red Bull cars are the one to go for, right? Like you get to drive around in a car with a Red Bull can and
giving it away. I hear you. So good morning this morning. If you ever had a university Red Bull or Mother energy drink addiction, if you've kicked it for something healthier on the back of our conversation yesterday with Josh about achieving your health goals, today we want to know, what are you thinking about your early stage career? So one of my early stage career decisions was to, as we've just discussed, pedal, for lack of a better word, energy drinks. I've since evolved from that and found a little bit more meaning and purpose in what I do. But Anouk, Christine, good morning. Love to hear about your early stage decisions. So let's move on to something with a little bit of substance, shall we, Tim? So you've started your morning well, you got your drink, but I'm interested in when you were actually at university, when you were thinking about your career decisions and those decisions. When in uni did that start to become top of mind for you?
Yeah, so since the age, to take a step back first, since the age of 16, right through, actually 15, right way through my uni career, I was working at Baker's Delight. If you actually search up Baker's Delight, there's a commercial with me being the first night dater. There's like
I have to bring this up. This is so good.
Entertainer's Delight or some kind of theme. And so that really stabilized I had a good reasonable income. So I was able to focus mainly on my studies and engaging with student societies during my studies. And that was mainly, so I studied a Bachelor of Science, majoring in theoretical physics. So it was physics, the engineering, the science societies I was involved with. It wasn't until I got to the start of my 3rd year of uni that I felt a real disconnect between what I was learning and what I wanted to do with that knowledge. So the university system is very much set up to develop researchers. And so that was the focus. We were doing research tasks. We were learning how to write nice journal articles and learning about that system. But I was like, I would go home and tell my family over the dinner table all the cool stuff I was learning. And they were like, we're getting a little bit over it. Please shut up. I was like, well, how can I find a way that I can share this knowledge?
Yeah.
So I started to get involved with this thing called science communication, which at the start of my degree and even at school, I didn't know was a field that you could be involved with. And the idea is that we have hardcore research scientists, and the research science skill set is very different to getting the word out there and getting people to see it as relevant.
Yeah.
I felt that I could tread those lines quite well. So during my third year of uni, I really flipped my focus from starting to look at research through to looking at what jobs I could do as an educator.
I love it. Those worlds are somewhat really similar and somewhat really different. So I'm interested in when you look at starting to make those decisions or even entertaining those thoughts. Sometimes when I speak to students, and we've just crossed over 10,000 students that we've now worked with, so we've had a lot of these conversations. Thank you. But a big part of it was like, I didn't have the tools, just like you're saying. I didn't really have the tools to deal with those thoughts. I kind of thought maybe engineering is not for me, but I didn't really know what to do with that. So I'm wondering, when those thoughts started to come to you, did you go to family, friends, career advisor? Did you start reading a book? Was there anyone who guided you through it, or did you kind of like stumble your way and just figure it out?
That's a really great question. I didn't really know that the university had a careers service. I didn't understand any of that world. And there was a lack of communication, I think, about that in courses. And I now advocate, working in a university, I advocate for lecturers to include career content as part of what they deliver and provide those services.
100%, right? Like how I was exactly the same as you. I didn't not to interrupt, but I had no idea that career service was I didn't think about using it. I just didn't think about it. So yeah, that's amazing. I think can you get careers into every course? Like why not? Why not look at the practical side of it?
So uni was not my hardcore physics courses, I should say, were not the way that I got knowledge. I actually needed to get one more course in my load at the start of third year of uni. And so I was starting to think about this science communication piece. And there was a first year science communication course. So I thought, I'm a third year student. I can smash out a first year course. It'll be nice and easy. I'll be able to learn about the world. And I get my course, but then I get to experience that world and see if it's for me, because I wasn't quite sure how to go about gaining content knowledge at that time.
Yeah.
Pretty much a couple of weeks into that course, they had a representative from Questacon, the National Science and Technology Centre, come in and talk about their volunteer programs. So that's where people that are interested in communicating science can come in a couple of hours a week and man different stalls across the Questacon building and practice.
Cool.
I was really scared about that idea, but I knew that I had about 6 years of retail experience under my belt. I was second in charge at Baker's Delight in sales at what was at the time Woden Plaza, the highest grossing Baker's Delight store in the network. So that's the whole of the world. And so I was like, you know what I can do? I can work in the Questacon shop, because this is a good way to merge my experience with retail and learn about the science communication aspect, because you are communicating science while you're showing off all the science-based products. So I thought that'd be a good way to test the waters with a practical and have the theory in the course. Now, it got to week 5 of this science communication course, and another representative came in, but this was an academic, Dr. Sean Pereira, who is a researcher in cross-cultural science communication. And
interesting. I've not heard of that before. What's cultural science communication?
So that's where you start looking at the border crossings between different cultures to see whether the practice of science can be discussed. So
like the literal borders?
So the concept borders. So let me take you through it. So the science you learn at uni, at school, is Western science. It's a European-centric approach developed by the Germans, the French, and now managed by the English, because the Academy of Science in England.
Yep.
And when you look at, let's say, going out into Indigenous Australian communities, and you take this Western science and you say, this is what we need to learn, they're going to push back and say, for 60,000 years, we've also been doing science.
Yes.
But it's a different process. We document it in a different way. So it's about what happens when you want to communicate across those border crossings. Are they easy? Are they hard? Aikenhead is the researcher if you want to have a bit of a look at his work. There's a 2002 paper that's really awesome. To kind of tie it all back together, this researcher was starting a science communication internship program where people were going into schools. So students were going into schools and testing science communication literature for 5 weeks. Think of it like a super nanny program where the first 2 or so weeks you observe the classroom, you see what's going on, and then you take science communication literature that says how you should communicate science, and you apply that by designing a couple of lessons to deliver to these classes. Now, the school that I took on was Calwell High School down in Canberra's south, about 5 kilometres from where I was living, but a totally different world. Lower SES population, so lower socioeconomic status, they're highly disengaged students, which was really concerning, and a lack of motivation for tertiary study. Students were literally telling me in year 9 and year 10 that they were not smart enough. They were like, you're not. So I was at the ANU and they're like, I'm not ANU material. And that was my first realization of what is going on in the education system. It really gets home with me, and it's something that I think that I want to work in.
Wow. And so you're getting towards the end of your degree at this point, right? Is this 3rd year?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So when it comes, like, if we flash forward then and it's like, okay, decision time, I've got to figure out what am I going to apply for, jobs. Students are out there right now, sort of May when we're recording this in sort of the middle of the year. Some grad applications already closed. Lots of people are thinking about next year. We know from the data, more people look in their penultimate year than their final year. So when you were actually making that decision of like, where do I apply? How did you think about that? Did you apply for, did you go scattergun approach? Did you just pick one and go really deep? Did you only apply to work at Questacon or in the school system? Like, what did you do?
I felt really disenfranchised by the whole process, to be honest. I didn't really know I didn't know that it was a thing. I didn't know grad job applications started so early. Like, some programs closed in March. So at the time that I'm learning that this education issue is something that I want to work in and I'm feeling torn away from research, I've already missed the boat for a number of programs. And at that point in time, I didn't know that so many were after STEM grads that they will take mid-year entries, because there are so many graduate employers that are desperate for the skill sets that STEM provides, particularly good communicators, as you and I learnt through our time at Teach for Australia. So I went for a scattergun approach. I tried to hedge my bets. I was like, you know what, I can still do a bit of research. So I was chatting with supervisors about honours projects. In 2nd semester, I took on a research project, which was in citizen science. So there's this thing called the Zooniverse, where people log on and they help classify things like galaxies in images to help build an AI system to do that. So I'm working as part of that as a bit of a crossover. And I essentially applied for public service grad jobs in Canberra, the Australian nuclear reactor in Sydney, as part of the education outreach team. And I got absolutely none of those things that I applied for, including honours.
And I think this is a good moment to take pause. We're kind of halfway through, and where we really want to get to is, if you're tuning in and you're listening to us today, and we love that you're jumping in on the comments. So if you are here, if you are listening to us, we'd love to know what you think. What's your experience? Catherine's jumping in, who's a senior coordinator at La Trobe, and Jerry as well. Good morning. Great to see you both again. If you get to that point, you apply for all these grad jobs, you're sort of torn between a couple of pathways, and then you don't get any grad jobs. Because this is the reality for lots of students. They come out of university and they actually don't get a grad job offer. We know the data is really, really low. And I think you've got some of the specifics around the numbers there. But when you don't get a grad job, when you're sort of left hat in hand, how do you think about that? Like, what was running through your mind at that point?
I was really lucky that I had employment with, so at this point in time, I'd moved on fully to Questacon. I'd left my Baker's Delight role to the side. And I decided that I could handle being a casual for at least a little while longer. So, 12 months later, I realized that security was a big thing for me. But what I realized was I didn't get through any of the rounds. I had very low, my grade point average was, I think, 5 point something out of 7. So I wasn't able to get into any of the big programs that I was interested in. So I ended up just saying, I just want to do work in this field. And so I worked as a casual employee at Questacon. And I actually tried to push myself and move into the more educator space. I applied for an APS level 4 position as a science communicator running education programs for schools. And APS 4, for those that don't know the Australian Public Service Group, like content, that is essentially a graduate level or even higher role. So there's people that have master's degrees sitting in that level of pay. And so that was kind of a bit of a goal for me. I applied for one APS 4 role, I got knocked back, but got some really good feedback. And then I used that to develop my skills and then applied again.
And I think there's two really great points there, super practical for students if you're listening in, is one, if you don't get that grad job and you're looking at graduating, casual work's an option. Like COVID will pass, the country will reopen, all these jobs and lots of businesses, it's a bit of an opportunity because lots are actually going to have to rehire because people have moved on or changed depending on their situations. And so casual jobs and figuring out with this activity around how much does your life cost, if you know you only need $500 a week to live for rent and food and whatever else, and you can reduce that number, you take that number, divide it by an hourly pay rate, even minimum wage, and for 20, 25, 30 hours a week, normally most people can get by. So knowing that's an option, even if it's just buying time until the next year where you apply for the next intake. And I think the second thing that you mentioned there, which is really, really practical, is you got knocked back, but you got some feedback. And so from just a general point of view, always asking for feedback from interviews, like very, very helpful. So you don't make the same mistake twice. But I'd love to know, Tim, from you, when you got that initial feedback, because it can be scary. And I don't like getting feedback sometimes. And that's why I lean into it so much and always ask for it, because I know it's just a thing that I just feel weird about. But what did you get from that initial feedback? What did you hear back in from people who were telling you about how you were doing, what you were applying, what you were saying?
I had the fantastic opportunity, because I was applying for education-based roles. A lot of educators hold what's called a growth mindset, where you focus on the positive learnings at every opportunity.
Sure.
There's a quote from a boxer floating around that's like, I never lose, I win or learn. So that kind of attitude. So this recruitment, like the hiring manager that was looking for this role, actually took me through the science center and showed me the different projects, and like we had what they look for. And that included further study, which I was kind of on the fence about, but it also included project management skills. So being able to plan a large scale thing, and so event management, running event, working with young people, all of those things. Yeah. So I took that nugget and I actually sat on it for a little while, and then an opportunity arose, which was really great, which is I've been involved with politics for a number of years within the ACT community. So for those people that are interested in politics, you may have heard for Bullet Train for Australia. I was part of founding that back when I was in my first year of uni with a few other people. And we were thinking about running a candidate in the 2016 election, but not as Bullet Train people, because people were like, what do you care about besides Bullet Train? But actually, as fully
that was my first question when you told me about this. I'm like, what else? Like, Bullet Train and... go on. It's so good. I love it.
Single issue parties rarely get votes. And so I decided to run as a candidate in the 2016 ACT election for in the Tuggeranong region, which is where that Cornwall High School was. So I knew the issues facing the young people. I was able to run on a platform of education. I learned how to write media releases, how to engage media, how to convince people to take on my ideas, how to running a full-scale campaign on a shoestring budget when the other major parties have millions of dollars. And I took that skill packet and I went back and applied for the science communicator roles with Questacon, so that higher level up. And I got those roles because I'd gained those skills elsewhere.
I love it. And I think there's some really, and let's dive into some of the career sort of strategy stuff in a second, because I think that's where your expertise is. I think people will love hearing about that. But I think that is such an important point to say, if you know you want a career or a certain job, meet the people who are hiring before you apply, if possible. Look at people who already work there and ask them what skills they want, and then go and find that in a real world project whether that's volunteering on campus, a club, society, a mentoring program, being an ambassador, a wellness ambassador, whether it's running for an election, whether it's doing a fundraiser was a big thing for me. It was raising money for charities, and that's where I learned that sort of project management stuff. If you do a real world project where you have to speak to real people about a real thing, you will learn so much and be amazed of how applicable it can be. So for you, Tim, when you get into that situation, you've got some jobs, you've made some early careers, but now you're helping other people navigate some early career decisions. And so I'd love to know, I mean, we could talk for ages about the journey, and I think it is truly fascinating, but to make sure we leverage some of your expertise, I'd love to know, when you're speaking or thinking about careers for people who are in the situation that maybe you were in a few years ago, what are some of the frameworks or tools or pieces of advice or things to think about that you give them or work them through?
Yeah, so that first one is, I really echo what you've just shared about pursuing the skill sets in other ways.
Yeah.
Something that I use that you've shared regularly is using LinkedIn to be able to research those different roles. And I wish that I was such an avid LinkedIn user when I was making these early career decisions.
Yeah.
And now to explore the opportunities that are out there and see what other skill sets I should develop to be involved in, because I'm now in educational technology, running a startup. So I look at the skill sets that other people hold. So that's, just kind of going on the back end.
Love it.
I actually have been so interested in helping people learn about their career journeys that I last year studied a graduate certificate in careers education through RMIT Uni. And there's a whole lot of opportunity for understanding the theory behind why people consider careers and how they can pursue it. There's a really complex blueprint called the Australian Blueprint for Careers Development, ABCD, and it sets out how people should develop their careers from the age of kind of 2 all the way through to late stage. So if you want to do the deep dive into all the craziness, do that.
Love it.
What I encourage is actually called DOTS, the DOTS framework. And essentially this stands for 4 different areas that you want to develop in to explore your career and make better decisions. So the first one is D for decision making. So explore how you make decisions already and what other models and frameworks you can use to make decisions. So that is how you weigh up factors, and there's an awesome link going up there. Yep. So how you weigh up things. So I'm a massive pros con person. So making a pros list and a cons list and exploring kind of the cost benefit analysis. For me, other people may be very values motivated, which I recognize that I was in that early stage, very driven by wanting to work for a cause that had this education piece and equity element. And that kind of underpins the work that I do now as well.
Yeah.
And all of the different research and supporting tools that you can use to make decisions. So that's the D.
Okay. Give us OT and S quickly, and then I want to quiz you about it.
Alrighty. Opportunity awareness is O. So that is that research piece. How do you do research, learning about the different jobs, internships, that kind of stuff. T is transition learning. So that is about how you seek and secure opportunities. So Josh has put together a whole lot of good content on how to get a job, running a student society. That is the stuff that you need to learn as part of that. And the final piece is self-awareness, understanding your motivations, your skills, and your personalities, and how they will engage in the career market and how you're going to work with all the different roles, because you're always going to get a job question about how are you going to work with our team and why do you want to work here?
Yeah, I love it. And for you, if you were to pick out one of those 4, where do you think in your journey or in the journeys of lots of young people that you work with now, is there a part of that jumps out in terms of they haven't really thought about it before, or they haven't had the language for it before, or it's a really key kind of distinction for people to make? Is there one, if you had to pick one of those 4, is there one that jumps out to you?
So there's one that jumps out as the one that everyone goes for first, which is transition learning. So that is the kind of obvious one. That is learning how to do a job application and learning how to get through an interview. But the one that I don't think people put enough focus on is the self-awareness piece. Because you are to give the stat again that I shared in the comment section before all this started.
No, it's so good. I love this. I'm going to pop it up.
So 240,000 applications are submitted every year for the top 100 graduate employers for about 5,000 offers in the hand. So there are a lot of like things out there that people are applying for because the average grad applies for 9 or so jobs. But what you need to be aware is that they are looking for people who have a high level of self-awareness, who are able to jump into the professional setting and learn as a young professional what it's like to work on something and have it rejected, work in complex groups, work in fast-paced environments, deal with the fact that you may have to work a 60-hour week and put up with it, but then also engage in different ways. So that self-awareness piece about your personality, I think, is the thing that people don't focus on enough.
I love it. And let's dig into that. And Tim, I think you've really hit a vein there. A bunch of people are jumping in the comments and curious and commenting. So Estelle and Norman, good morning. Great to see you. Joanne and Norman, awesome. Oh, people are chatting and saying hello to each other. I love that. We've got a great comment here from Catherine saying, so good to hear from Tim on the value of embedded curriculum. Jason Brown and the Career Ready team has worked tirelessly to bring us to life. Practical and career theory, Dots has mentioned, the majority of grads. I work with a lot of alumni. Tim is just described all the time. So slowly, this will change. Yeah. So Tim, I don't know if you know Catherine Clems, but I think you guys would be best friends, if nothing else. And Catherine's just jumped in and said, my mantra is a grad job is a job that a graduate does. It does not define you. You define it. Ooh, I like that. I've never heard that phrase before, in that concept of it does not define you, you define it. I think part of where you can help an employer with that is when you sit down in front of someone, like you're saying with self-awareness, for them to get to know you is hard. To get to know another human is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
If you've done part of that work already, it makes the recruiter's job easier. If you know what you like, if you know what you're good at, if you know what your values are, which is hard to figure out, but if you put the work in to figure that out, it's much easier for you to then articulate it and for then that recruiter to make a decision or go, is this a good fit or not? Because I think you're right with the transition language is so important there. How do you get through it? How do you sort of beat the system? How do you write the cover letter, put the keywords in, get through the interview? Like, you don't want to trick your way into a job, because if you work 40 hours a week, 48 weeks, or 50 weeks a year for 40 years, which is conservative, that's 80,000 hours of work. And you don't want to be tricking your way into something, because then you've got to do 80,000 hours of it. You know, it's like, I think about it of like sneaking into a movie that you have no idea if you're going to like. Like, you can sneak in, like when the ticket person's looking the other way, you can like run in. But if you run into a movie, it's a horror movie and you don't like horror movies, like you're just going to have an awful experience for 2 hours and be very, very scared. Like, that's not success. Sneaking into the wrong movie is not success. I think the work of going, what kind of movie do I want? And then I'm actually willing to pay the price to see it, put in the work, do the practice, get the feedback. And then when you're in there, you enjoy it so much more because you're like, I know I like this. This is for me. I put in the work. So I wonder where, for self-awareness, Tim, if people are out there and like, okay, cool. So how do I develop self-awareness? Are there any tools or frameworks that you use or you've seen that you found to be particularly useful or practical?
So the favorite thing that I encourage people to look at, which is the career theory called planned happenstance, which is the idea that we don't know what's going to happen to us. There's that quote that life is 90%, like 10% what happens to us and 90% how we respond. And that's the idea behind planned happenstance, is that you should have develop things like curiosity, resilience, and flexibility to be able to take on all of those different opportunities that may arise so you can identify them. So in exploring yourself and what motivates you and those kind of things, that's when you can start to unpack what makes you curious. And, can you develop your resilience in different ways? Do you need are you someone who is driven by deadlines, or can you create your own self-imposed deadlines? And then those are the things that you can share with a graduate recruiter and say, what I bring to your program is I'm a deadline-driven person. And I think that'll work well in your business because I've spoken with alumni that have gone through your grad program. But what I want to learn over these 2 years is how to self-impose my own deadlines. Yes. And then when that recruiter goes to look through the thousands of applications, they'll remember that conversation that they had with you. And they'll go like, I think this person actually really understands himself. So I would encourage people to look at planned happenstance and start looking at the ways that you can get ready to deal with immediate change.
I love that. I love this concept, the quote that I just popped up there around what makes you curious. So if we're talking about how do you make early stage career decisions, I think that is a gem, that idea of like so many great things that you've said today, but I think pulling that one out, if people are wondering, okay, like what can I practically do? Think about the things that when you hear about them, you want to know more, you want to learn more, you're curious, you go down the rabbit hole. Like if you find yourself like I think there's two different versions. If you're on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, and you're just randomly scrolling and you're bored and you're going through everything, you're not down the rabbit hole, you're stuck in the vortex. Like that's different. That's got gravity. You've been sucked in. But if you find yourself going, oh, this is interesting, I want to find out more, I'm going to read all the references and da 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 da. If you're going deeper into something, I think that's a really good sign that you're curious. And you can get curious about yourself. You can learn a whole lot about what's going on in here and what you're capable of. But if you can be curious about what's going on with you and then a particular topic and learn how those two things fit together, I think you can get in a really nice little pattern. And on Monday, we had Julian O'Shea on the show, and he was talking about the idea of fun in education. And one of the connections I'd never made before is that curiosity is, for me at least, I know, at the root of so much fun. It's like I want to learn about something. I enjoy that. But also curiosity is at the root of education too. And so like when those two things go together, curiosity is almost kind of the link, at least for me. And so this is really interesting too, when you start going, okay, well, how does that link to a career? It's like, well, what are you curious about? What do you want to learn more about?
Exactly right. It was great to see Julian have that conversation on Monday and bring that out. One thing that I'd like to share about myself before we kind of potentially move on is that I've been working with a psychologist to work through all of the crazy thing that's going on in Canberra at the moment. For those that don't know, fires, hail, and now COVID, and working from home dynamic. And one of the things that I explored with my psychologist was the things that I do have to be values based. And so it's about making strategic decisions about what I do that are based in my values. And so I had this conversation last month, and I just spent the last month being really curious and exploring myself and exploring what I valued in other people. I started writing some lists and identifying all of those things. And one of the things I identified is that I value in people when they give of their own time and don't expect something in return. And what I've tried to do this week is exactly capture that by sharing some of my experiences on this show. I ran a workshop last night for Robogirls in Canberra.
Cool.
I'm getting deeper engaged with politics again, because those are the things that I sit there and close down Facebook and work on those projects.
Yes.
Whereas I know when I don't like it, I easily drift back to Facebook again. I'll just check notifications again after I've sent this email, because clearly I didn't want to send that email.
Yeah, I love that. I think and thanks for sharing that. I think it's a really brave thing to talk about in a context where I think in a few years, this idea of everyone seeing a psychologist will be normal. And I really hope that's where we get. I know I met an organizational psychologist for the first time when I was maybe 25, 26, something like that. And it was around, I was transitioning from one job to another job. And I didn't even realize that like universities, free psychologists, workplaces, most of them offer free psychologist sessions. And I went and sat with this person. And the thing that got me was it was a work sponsored session. First time I'd ever sort of sat down with a psychologist. And I was like feeling it out. I was like, how does this work? And I was really surprised that part of their advice was, I really recommend that you leave the role that you're in. And I was like, what? Like, I'm sure they didn't say, like, we recommend you do this, but it was like, it was okay that that's sort of what I was leading to, some version of that. And I was like, the reason I was confused was I was like, but hold on. I was following the dollars. I was like, doesn't work pay you? So isn't your motive to keep me in work? Like that would make sense to me. Like pay an external supplier, keep staff happy. And she was like, no. Like this is a service for your well-being. And right now it sounds like for your well-being, a transition is the best thing. And I was like, oh. And it was like a shift in the landscape. And I didn't realize that that's how it worked. That sounds so silly, right? But I just assumed that because I was in a workplace, everything was all roads would lead back to, you know what'll make you happy? You should just keep working. Like, you should, like whatever. And it wasn't that. And it was a game changer for me. So I was like, oh, it's okay to know that this isn't a perfect fit for me. And that there's another stage and I can move on to that. So yeah, that work is so powerful. And if you're out there and you're listening, and this is something where, it is, as you say, it's a tough time. Fires, hail, COVID, a million other things, mental health just running rampant, as we know, around Australia and around the world. If you haven't met with a psychologist before and it's something that you're like, okay, this kind of sounds interesting, I really recommend checking it out, whether it's free resources online, booking in at your university, at your school, in your workplace. Because for both of us, it sounds like it's just been so helpful. And I never thought of it. Another one of those things, that I just never thought of when I was 20 years old or 24 years old.
Exactly right. And so thank you for sharing, Josh. For those that want the number, if this has raised anything, Lifeline Australia is 13 11 14. I think it's important that we share those when we have the opportunity to, those contact numbers, and use those opportunities that arise, linking this all back to the career space, particularly for grads. I want to remind everyone that your life is made up of, as Josh shared, 80,000 hours of work. That is not reliant upon the grades that you get at university and what you apply for as your grad job.
100%.
Develop your skills in the first 2 years out of uni, explore what you're interested in, and then chop and change. I've been sales, science communicator, HR. I run an ed tech now. I've been a politician and just a general volunteer at all the things. I'm even learning how to build a house at the moment with my partner's family. So you can do lots of things after you graduate. Who you work for as your grad job does not define the rest of your life.
Such solid advice. I couldn't agree with that anymore. And Tim, honestly, I think that's a really great place maybe to start wrapping up. It's really, really good. So if you're out there, if you're listening in, and thank you for all the comments and the engagement. Estelle was jumping in on the comments there and also saying, grad jobs aren't the be all and end all. I got a grad job consulting. It wasn't what I'd hoped for. Similar situation with me. Engineering grad job wasn't the right fit for me. I think that's exactly right. That idea of just explore yourself, be curious, look at that self-awareness, check out that DOTS model, check out the framework, work through some of the different stages, and know that you're not alone in this journey. Like, as Tim said, what was it? 240,000 applications for top 100 employers. There are also hundreds of thousands of nonprofits, government organizations, small businesses, startups, even just in Australia, that they're all looking for accountants and marketers and strategists, and in nonprofit space, volunteers who are willing to roll their sleeves up and do the work too. Mm-hmm. As well as, I didn't know at uni, obviously you can work for a nonprofit like we both did. I assumed everyone was a volunteer, which was wrong. So I'm always amazed by how much I didn't know at the time, and still how much I don't.
Unfortunately, Melbourne is the capital of not-for-profits. Canberra, not so much. We love our public service work too much.
I love it. And there's options out there. I really encourage people to explore them. Check out some of the resources we've talked about today. Obviously, if you are struggling, as we shared before, the Lifeline number there, we're always trying to be, Tim and I think it's something that a value that we share is being really open about our kind of journey, and acknowledging that people are struggling at different times. So if that's you or a friend, please make contact and reach out to, obviously you can reach out to me. I don't want to volunteer Tim's information, but send a message. I can send you on some support services for sure. But besides that, when you're thinking about...
echo that. So
cool.
Get in contact with me, LinkedIn, send me a message and we can chat over the phone. I am learning about all this career stuff. So If anyone wants to have a conversation with me about their experiences, I'd be happy to. Yeah. And also share on to support services as well where possible.
Love it. That's amazing. So Tim, if people want to check you out, follow your work in general, get in touch with you with anything that you're doing, where's the best place? Come on, Josh. Where's the best place for people to find you?
All right, so find me on LinkedIn. Timothy Friel is my name. Search me up. You'll probably see a photo with these glasses. Or send me an email, which is Gmail, so tim.s.friel, Friel, @gmail.com. I also work at the Australian National University in Canberra. So right now, we're obviously all working from home. But once we get back on the campus, if there's any students that are watching that are part of the ANU community, please get in touch. I'm in the Physics Education Centre running a startup called MerySTEM. So if people want to have a bit of a chat, and also we're a fully volunteer-powered startup. So if you want to get some volunteer experience in education, we're the group to come chat to.
There you go. What a pitch. I love it. All right, Tim, thanks for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks for everyone jumping in. Joanne saying thank you. Great advice. So really, really appreciate your time watching as well. This has been episode 18 of Coffee with Campus Consultancy. Before we leave, just so you know, as always, we're sponsored by the wonderful, we are partnered with. We're partnered with the wonderful Kua Coffee, our impact partner, a world positive coffee, supporting farmers and families in Uganda. So if you've enjoyed today, if you want to take a screenshot of this or tag or let us know, how do you have your coffee? Each week, we're sending out some delicious coffee to some guests that we really appreciate. So if you want to get your hands on some great coffee, you can comment, tag, anything like that. We'll make sure we get it to you. But really, this has just been a really special time to chat with you as well, Tim. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. And we hope, if you're enjoying this, we'll see you tomorrow again, friends, at 8 a.m. for episode number 19.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thanks all. Thanks, Tim. And thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon. All right, Tim.